Hi, I'm Cristina Samaniri, and I'm here with Tim Srock today, the CEO of Mendix. And today we're talking and chatting about customer experience. Or rather, I'll be asking questions, and Tim will be answering them. So let's see what he has to say. Tim, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Christina, for having me, and also warm welcome from my side. So, yeah, looking forward to the chat.
Great. Well, first question. Mendix recently sponsored a new customer experience survey, and we asked about 500 IT leaders, enterprise architects, and developers. Why is creating the best customer experience so difficult? Why does it matter, and why are we doing it? And according to these respondents, the top three reasons why organizations are developing and deploying customer experience is to increase customer loyalty and retention, to improve brand perception, and to stay ahead of the competition. So within the realm of customer experience, what makes those three things, so customer retention, loyalty, brand, and being ahead of the competition, so vital?
Yeah, I think it's a very relevant question for a lot of companies out there. In a digital age, customer experience is vitally important. Every company becomes a software company, and there's a digital first strategy. So every company needs to think about how to digitize their processes and how to think about internal and external functions contributing to that process. In the end, what we see that customers on average have 10 digital touch points with their customers. And so everyone in the company is touching the customer experience. But what we also see is that rarely companies today address those challenges. So you have a unique opportunity, a really rare opportunity out there to think about customer experience first and to use the means of low-code to digitize the customer experience. Because again, customers are seeking for this seamless experience. They want to have a smooth experience. And so you have to think about how you enable that as a company. And again, through the means of low codes, you can iterate fast. You can respond agile to changing market dynamics, because I think that's the other challenge we see, that the environment you're operating in is constantly changing. So how do you think about responding fast? And connect that back to the initial question. I think what is important in the end, in order to stay competitive, you have to think about how you make it a seamless experience, how to iterate fast on changing requirements. And so if you're being competitive, ultimately that means that there's a higher chance of retaining your customers because you're offering a best-in-class experience. And that ultimately will also lead to more brand loyalty. So those three themes for me are super interconnected, and you have to think about them not just as standalone threads. You really have to combine them in order to be successful in today's world.
Thank you for your answer. And in the end, it's the most important thing that our customers are happy, right? So, good answer. So, next question. It's often easier and less expensive to keep an existing customer rather than land a new one. So, in terms of customer retention, how do you connect the value of improving the customer experience to the potential impact of preventing customer churn?
Yeah, also a very relevant topic in today's world. We talked about customer experience, and the other theme out there is this notion of hyper-personalization. In the end, your customer needs are varying from person to person. So just personalization in itself doesn't cut it anymore. It's really thinking about hyper-personalization. So how do you put the needs of the individual first? And hyper-personalization really allows you to do that. You're collecting a lot of data since all the interactions are digital, right? So you have data as an asset, and you have now the means of AI, machine learning, and big data to basically use this data and contextualize it. And hyper-personalization is really about that, putting the persona first, thinking about their background, their preferences, how they want to consume your product. And you use that to deliver the best-in-class experience. And with that, you can differentiate from your competition. And in the end, if you are able to do that, you deliver that best experience, and the customer will value that with brand loyalty. And then ultimately, again, you will retain this customer. And this is super important. It's like you said, the most expensive part of actually in a customer lifecycle is acquiring that customer in the first place. So you want to have that focus on retaining, and the technology means out there right now help you to do that at scale. So again, it's about hyper-personalization and how you enable the best-in-class customer experience with technology.
Great, thank you for your answer. So here's another stat from the Win with Customer Experience survey. So close to 40% of respondents stated that the two biggest roadblocks to improving or updating apps for customers, partners, or employees are miscommunication of requirements between IT and business, or the end user, and requirements that are changing over time. So this one sounds pretty familiar because Mendix was literally founded on the concept of bridging the gap between business and IT. So why do you think the challenge of understanding requirements continues to stand in the way of building better software faster?
Yeah. So we were talking earlier about that everyone in the company and every function and every process is basically impacting the digital and customer experience, or is digital and impacts the customer experience. And if you think about that, right, so everyone in your company is touching the customer and is contributing to that experience. So you have to think about how you first unlock that experience. So how do you unlock the human capital in your organization? And again, this is involving the business in the process of how you want to digitize this experience. So that's first. So I think this is where low code comes in, the notion of citizen developer, right? Having IT and business iterate much more quickly on these ever changing requirements from a customer perspective. So I think that's for one. So unlock the human capital in your organization, and then secondly, it's also about the market dynamics, right? We were talking about the notion of competitive threats, but also recently we heard about supply chain shortages. So there are a lot of disruption coming at you as an organization. So you have to think about how you respond to that quickly. And again, this is also where low code comes in. You can iterate fast with your IT department, and you can respond fast to these requirements coming at you. And with that, you innovate ultimately, and you be this agile organization you want to be in order to succeed in a digital first world.
Thank you again for your answer. It makes a lot of sense. One last question, but this is a big one. In terms of experience, the end user isn't always an external customer. For some large enterprise organizations, IT might actually be more focused on employees as customers rather than external users. Employee experience may not hit the bottom lines in terms of profit, but it does affect an organization's overall efficiency. After all, people who aren't fighting technology battles on all day get more done in less time, and they might be even happier doing it. So how can using a platform like Mendix, one that enables continuous collaboration between people who use the software and those who build it, impact the employee experience? So how does that translate to value?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think it's a people first world, right? And we have to think about our employees first. I talked about that every company becomes a software company. I think what we also see in the industry is a trend that there's also a shortage of skilled workers, and there's a huge war for talent. So you have to think about how you differentiate also on the employee experience side. And I think there are a couple of themes within an organization. You were talking about operational efficiency. Obviously, that's one everyone is focusing on. But for me, that's just the start. Yes, low code helps you to operate more effectively and efficient as an organization because we can automate certain paper processes. We make it more engaging for the organization. So we think about digitizing the operation. But I think for me, again, more important is how do you make everyone in your organization part of that process? So how do you unlock that human capital? And again, low code helps you that what we just discussed, right? Getting everyone in your organization participating in your business strategy and your business success. So I think that's key. And then ultimately for me as an employee, that's gratifying because you see the impact of your work directly now. So that for one. But secondly, it's also about the experience you want to give to your employees, right? Be it onboarding, be it how I request my PTO, or be it how I look at my rewards. And so you want to think about how do you up-level your experience layer in an organization. And obviously there's core systems out there like SAP or Workday, and employee often has to interact with. So you want to think about how can you differentiate as an organization? How do you deliver the best employee experience? And so again, low code is a means to customize and to make this much more unified in terms of an employee experience. So you can build on top of these core systems, unique and really engaging experience layers. And that's something you have to think about it as you want to differentiate as an employer. So how do you unlock the human capital in your organization, but also how do you make sure you have the best employee experience through digital means in your organization?
And like we referred to in the first or second question, happy customers are so vital and important. Next to that, also happy employees are important, right, for your company. So thank you for all of your questions, and thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. And if I have more tricky, intriguing questions about technology, I'll know whose door to knock on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Cristina.